Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It's Mr. Mike Vonbeardingham here. I would like to welcome today. I had to check just how to say her second name because I'm terrible at that. So I'm joined today by Brittany Neupauer. Hello.
Hello.
Lovely to have you with us.
Nice
Enjoying
to
the
be
crappy weather as we are as well.
here.
So nice to know our cousins across the water suffer the same as we do.
Yeah.
Right. So, first of all, thank you very much for doing this. Really, really appreciate it. Would you like to tell everyone a little bit about yourself?
Well, I have four children. I have three of my own and a bonus child, 14, 11, 7, and almost 6. Um, I like to crochet. I draw. Those are kind of my therapies. I have lots of plants. My kids claim I love them more than them. Um,
Easier to manage.
yeah, we have a little Jack Russell Terrier dog who is kind of our therapy dog in the house as well. And I help run my kid's dad's business. That's about it.
Cool. Um, so the same as I do in most of these interviews, let's start back at the beginning to a time where you first noticed that there was some changes going on, whether it was with your body, with your mental health, anything that gave you some indication and made you think, I need to go and try and get this checked out.
Um, I would say what was my later teens is when I really noticed something wasn't right. Um, the pain aspect started when I was about 13, 14. And my mom had let me know that her menstrual cycles were horrible. There were times she had to stay home from school. So
Mm.
throughout middle and high school, she would tell me, if you need to stay home the first couple days of your period, I'm fine with that because she dealt with it herself. So that should have been red flags, but because we're told it's normal to have painful periods and cramping and heavy bleeding, you don't really look into it. I was
Mm.
prescribed naproxen, um, high doses of ibuprofen, and I dealt with a lot of constipation and stomach issues, belly aches when I was a young child, like
Mm.
ever since I could remember. I also dealt with headaches, which I remember my grandfather telling my mom, this isn't normal. Little kids shouldn't have belly aches and headaches and
No.
all this for so long, but it became my normal. Um, and I want to say I got pregnant with my first at 17. So I had no pain. You don't have a period when you're pregnant. So it was awesome. I loved being pregnant um, until, towards the end.
Mm.
And then after that, I dealt with a lot of abnormal cervical cells. So I had colposcopies. I had what they call cryotherapy, where they freeze your cervix to get the precancerous cells out. And then I got pregnant again about 2 years later. So I was happy again. Um, and then after my third child is when I'm like, this isn't right. I started researching more. I came across a YouTuber who was telling her story about endo. I'm like, that sounds like me.
Mm.
I'm having these pains. I'm having abnormal bleeding. Sometimes I would bleed really heavy, and then towards the afternoon, nothing. And then it's back again. And it was just really weird. It
Yeah.
wasn't a normal cycle. Um, oh, back up a little bit. I want to say I was about 20, and I had told my gynecologist when he was doing a biopsy, I was like, I'm having a lot of pain. It's like, I have pain with intercourse. I'll start bleeding afterwards. And he's like, oh, that's normal. Your cervix are either just sensitive or he's too big. I'm like, oh, okay.
Your
So
cervix is
now,
too big.
yeah, like my cervix are too soft and his anatomy is too big. Okay.
Okay, it's a new one.
So I kind of just let that go.
Yeah.
I'm like, hey, this is normal. Um, so then I lost my train of thought. Yeah,
Uh,
after the YouTuber a couple years ago, I
mm.
started looking in because it was probably my mid 20s after I had my second child. So I was about 25, 26. and I was getting my cycles again, and it was the worst pain ever. Like, I pretty much could compare it to childbirth, but
God.
just one that I'm like, it's not going to go away in a few hours when I give birth. So about 2 years ago, I had talked to my family doctor about how painful it is. I can't manage the pain. I'm trying heating pads, I'm trying ibuprofen, Tylenol, naproxen. Nothing's working. So she referred me to the gynecologist again. And the one I had was pretty validating. He's like, it sounds like you have textbook symptoms of endo. We're
Oh,
going to
wow.
treat you like you have endo. So that was validating, but he refused to do the lab to verify it.
Right.
So with my insurance, nothing really worked. So he's like, let's try this birth control. I'm like, I've been on everything. I
Mm.
tried combination birth control pills. They give me migraines, so I can't be on anything that raises my estrogen. I tried the mini pill. That was probably the best thing just because it didn't make it worse. It didn't make it better. It's just kind of limbo.
Mm.
The depot shot, that was hell.
In what
It was
way?
great. Yeah. Well, after my second child, I was put on it. And for about 15 to 18 months, it was really good. I didn't get a period. I had no pain. And then after that, I started spotting, and it was just almost like popping pain. It's kind of hard to describe. So I went to my primary and talked to her during one of my physicals, and she's like, yeah, it sounds like your ovarian cyst is rupturing. Let's take you off and put you on something else. And that's when I went on the combination pill
Mm.
and had migraines about 5 days out of a week, to the point my boss is like, what's going on? You can't be calling off. You can't be leaving early. I'm seeing a neurologist pretty soon.
Yeah.
And he pretty much wanted to put me on some other pill that causes horrible side effects. So I went off my birth control pill as kind of an experiment, and it went away. And then I got pregnant again. So but the second time I went on Depo after I had my third child, nothing was ever right. Like, I got my first injection 3 months later. Before my first, I was bleeding straight and having excruciating pain for about a week until my injection. And then that cycle just repeated, but the time I was bleeding was longer. It was anywhere from 2 weeks to 3 weeks. I was
God.
bleeding in excruciating pain those entire 2 or 3 weeks. And the nurse at my gynecologist's office is like, that's normal. And I'm like, this isn't normal. The first time I was on it, I was pain free for a while. And she's like, you're older, you know, it's expected. Your body's different. I'm like, I'm only like 2, 3 years older than the last time I was on it. So I dealt with it. And then I had a really bad flare up. And I think it was the 4th of July. I was drinking. So I was pretty drunk. And I went to get a shower. And when I wiped after going to the bathroom, I felt there was this weird thing, and it looked like a fetus. So, of course, being drunk, I'm extra emotional, and I'm calling my boyfriend and I'm calling my best friend. And I'm like, look at this. I killed a baby. I'm drunk. I don't know what to do. And I couldn't call off because I've already had enough call offs. So I had to go to work. I'm in pain. I'm emotional. And I go to our emergency room the next day, and the doctor's like, yeah, that looks like a fetus. I'm pretty sure you miscarried. My levels were normal. So she
Hmm.
said it was months prior. So I'm thinking it was before the depot shot. Maybe it just didn't show up in the pregnancy test. And so I call my gynecologist's office because they like you to, um, brain fog,
So
fun
that's all
with
right.
endo. They like you to follow up with your primary or your gynecologist
Yeah.
after something like that. So I call, and his nurse calls me back, and she's like, well, you have a pap smear at the end of the month. It's the beginning of the month. It's the 4th of July, or at that point, it was like the 6th of July. And my appointment isn't until the very end. It was like the 30th or 31st of July. And she's like, well, I think you can hold off. And I'm like, I would really feel much more comfortable if I was looked at and get to talk to my doctor. And she like just kept shutting me down. And it got to the point where, very rudely, she says, well, the emergency room mistook a blood clot for an ovary before. So I highly doubt you miscarried. So that's when I said, a
Wow.
couple F bombs and told her cancel my appointment and
Mm-hmm.
hung up. And she kept calling me back. And she's like, I'm sorry, but I'm like, but nothing. Just take me off your list. I'm no longer coming here. I'm no longer a patient. I'll go to my primary's office. Well, I went to my primary office. They sent the thing that came out of me to pathology, and they determined it wasn't fetal tissue. So I didn't miscarry, but they never said what it was. So at that point, I'm like, am I falling apart?
Yeah, it's
And now with
a bit worrying.
endometriosis, I'm sorry.
I was just going to say it's a bit worrying. This just came
Yeah,
out of you. We don't know what it is, but okay.
this was back in 2014. So I went forever not realizing what it was. And now I'm thinking it might have been some endometrial tissue that maybe finally came out and the cramping was it detaching or something. I don't know. But it's been a mess. And I finally got my diagnosis last year after the doctor that I spoke about a minute ago, well, more than a minute, um, after he was validating, but refused to do the lap unless it got too bad. He's like, we'll
Right.
do it. But at this point, he's like, we know it's pretty much endo and we'll just treat it since there's no cure.
Yeah.
Well, he retired. I think it was just the universe saying, okay, it's time to change. So I went to a doctor in his office who has really good reviews and had friends that swear by him. And as soon as I walked in there, he's like, yep, I agree. I think you have endo. He's like, I think our next step would do a lap. Um, if I was comfortable with it, which yes, I want a
Yeah.
diagnosis. um, so he went in and he cut my tubes out. So no more babies. Don't have to worry about
Mm-hmm.
any of that anymore. And he scraped a little bit off just to test it. And I was determined to have the endo. And recovery from that for me was horrible. Didn't realize I should have been doing a detox of my bowels. I was so bloated and like there's got to be a better way to diagnose endo than surgery.
Yeah.
We're in the 21st century. Like, come on now. um, so after that, he's like, here's your treatment options. He mentioned Lupron and birth controls, which we both agreed. I've been on almost every birth control. I think there's only a couple I haven't tried, but they're in the same families of ones I have been on.
Yeah.
So I decided I wanted to try Oralisa. It's kind of like the Lupron shot, but it's designed for women with endo.
Oh, okay.
Um, it has really helped me. I've been on it since March and I didn't have a period. I had hot flashes and night sweats and couldn't sleep well and all that fun stuff that comes with going into menopause. But then in August, I had a really bad flare up. And I'm pretty sure I did it to myself by deciding to have what I call mommy drink. I made myself a mixed drink, and the next day I was bedridden for about 3-4 days. I couldn't stand, I couldn't sit, I couldn't move. So that's when I started joining the endo support groups, um, and found out different dietary things can trigger it. So now I'm gluten free, mostly dairy free, soy free, absolutely no alcohol. And it's been better. And then I had another flare up in October, and I have no clue what triggered it. I wasn't overexerting myself, I didn't cheat, nothing. I was actually really good that week. Um, and it sounded like it was a UTI. Um,
Right.
like I told you earlier, I watched Alex's interview,
Yeah.
and her pain is pretty much exactly what I experienced. The rectal pain where it feels like somebody is stabbing and twisting and constricting inside your bowels. I get this lower back and pelvic pain. Like once the rectal pain starts, it attacks my abdomen, and then my spine feels like it's being constricted and squeezed to the point it's about to snap in half. And I'm telling my doctor this, and they're like, yeah, that sounds maybe not like a UTI, but we'll test you anyways.
You think?
Um, just in
Yeah.
case. Um, so my doctor had his nurse call back and he's like, I'm upping your Oralisa. So now I'm on the max dose. But until I see you in December, think about other options. So now it sounds like I have a lot of surgery to think about. That's
Okay.
usually what other options
Yeah.
is in my case. So it's really hard. I
It-
don't know if I want to lose all my womanly parts and not be able to regulate my hormones, but I also don't want to be in pain the rest of my life.
this is the problem, isn't it? When we get to this stage where there are no other options, and I can
Mm,
imagine a lot of women get to the point where they're like, look, just do whatever you have to try and make this stop.
yeah.
But it's just the fact that it actually gets to that stage. It's such a harrowing thing. And
Hmm.
again, I don't know if there's, not that I know, but hey, I'm not a doctor. Um, there's not, I don't think there's like a male equivalent that would even compare to this. It's not like we go through years and years of incredibly swollen, painful testicles, and then we come. Someone says, "Right, well, you got to the point where your testicles are encased in like a crustacean that's causing you absolute pain. So what we're going to
Yeah.
do now? Your option is us for to lop your nuts off. We don't have that. So,
No.
but the fact that, as you said before, in this day and age, I know it's when we've talked with other people about this that it is a relatively new discovery. It's something that there is not there hasn't been that much research done into it. Diagnosing is an extreme problem, but there, if anything, the severity of it that should encourage people to say, look, there needs to be more done about this. There needs to be more research. There needs to be more funding into that research because it's a level of pain that people are living with that I've never heard of before, apart from maybe people who suffer with, severe arthritis or maybe chronic, pains from back pains where they're bedridden, can't move. But it's on that level, if not worse.
Yeah. Yeah. And I've seen plenty of accounts of people saying they tried to apply for disability because, I mean, it gets to the point you're calling off work all the time. Or, and I was just thinking earlier about jobs I've had. Us as women, we have this expectation to take care of a house, a family, work, all while taking care of ourselves too. And with endo, I can't even go to the grocery store to shop for our house, come home, cook dinner, clean up dinner, because by the time I get home from the grocery store, I'm cramping and in so much
Mm,
pain. I can't even move. So I tell my kids, like, here's a frozen pizza, throw it in the oven, and then I'll deal with dishes tomorrow.
yeah.
If tomorrow comes and I'm okay. Um, and I feel like the only male equivalent from what I've heard is possibly a kidney stone, as long as well as far as pain goes.
Yeah.
I can imagine my mother-in-law has Crohn's disease,
Oh no.
and so and my kid's dad, like he seems to have a lot of those symptoms. So when we talk about our pain, it's like, yeah, I know that pain. That sounds familiar. So I feel like people with stuff like Crohn's disease or ulcerative
Yeah.
colitis, they can kind of relate a little more.
Mm.
But yeah, it's like you said, this chronic illness. Why are people not raising hell and saying we need more research? You have a small group because we're 1 out of 10 women.
And
I mean,
it's
it
I,
seems small, but that's kind of big. It's not like we're 1 out of 100 or 1,000.
1 in 10 is a large amount,
It is.
considering the amount of people we probably know. How many of your friends does that mean technically? That if
Mhm.
I mean, when they say that, for example, like the cancer rate is likely to affect 1 in 3 people, now that's scary enough. But if they said 1 in 10 people would suffer with cancer, that is still incredibly scary. So to
Yeah.
say 1 in 10 have the possibility of their inner organs fusing together later in life to cause a hysterectomy, that's terrifying.
Yeah. And the 1 in 10, I'm thinking, okay, how skewed is that? Because we're told it's normal. We're told it's normal to have painful periods. Like my mom, I told you how she
Yeah.
was having issues as a child, and um, she had me at, I think she was 28, and then she tried to conceive with my brother, and that wasn't until she was like 38. She ended up having a uterine ablation to help slow her bleeding down. She doesn't know if the surgery was botched, or now I see on the endo sites that burning of the endo can make it worse because it doesn't cut the root out. It
Okay.
kind of just like burns it off and then it can still grow. So her symptoms got a lot worse. She was practically bedridden. She was passing out, and she had the same gynecologist I did, um, that had told me my cervix are too soft and my boyfriend was too big. Um, so he refused to do a lap. He was like, oh, it's too invasive. We're not going to do it. So she was never diagnosed. So, how many other women aren't diagnosed? The number could be more like 5 out of 10. Half of the female
Yeah.
population has endo.
Also,
It's
obviously, not every woman who suffers with endo will get to a stage 4.
right.
So again, you may have people living with lower stages. Something actually, we'll just go to because we've had some comments, and especially from Leanne, who was one of the other women I interviewed. She said, "This lady is me, spooky." She's had, I think, the same amount of kids, gone through pretty much a similar thing.
Mhm.
And she said, "Why are we dismissed when it comes to women's health? We wouldn't put up with any other pain or symptoms the way we put up with this, and it has to change." That's true. I remember when they actually, because I don't know, one of the reasons for doing these interviews is to try and possibly get some insights and some answers to why things are the way they are. And
Mhm.
one of the things is, are these kind of dismissed because there's still a bit of sexism and there's still a bit of stigma on a taboo subject when it comes to, oh, it's women's problems, etc. Because I remember when they trialed, was it like a male equivalent of the pill, and they
The
tried it in this,
Lupron.
yeah, and they tried it in this country, and the newspaper headlines were, it alters men's hormones and makes their moods funny and everything, we can't have this. And all the women were like, yep, that's exactly what happens to us all the time, so why is it okay for women and not men?
Yeah. Uh, I coincidentally, like, I follow this endo. I don't know what it's called. I'm new to Reddit, but there's this thread or something, and this one woman had posted about her debilitating pain, and she's gone, and basically the doctor's like, take Tylenol or take ibuprofen, and her husband has mild headaches. He was prescribed the highest dose of naproxen to help his mild headaches when their same doctor wouldn't help her with anything to help alleviate her pain. So I feel like women, this might be my feminism coming out a little bit, but
Unleash it.
we
You're in a safe place.
we kind of are looked at as, oh, suck it up, buttercup, or over exaggerating, like, oh, it can't be that bad. But then a man can go to the same doctor and it'd be like, oh, you're a manly man and you're supposed to be tough, but you're in here almost crying because of your pain. Here's a bunch of pills. But us, it's, oh, you're a drug seeker, or like, I haven't gone to the ER for my endo pain ever, except for the one time I told you I thought I miscarried.
Hmm.
Um, and it's mostly for that. My area is really big. We have a opioid pandemic right now.
Oh, okay.
We have, I think we still have current state of emergencies to help with getting people rehabilitated and education. So if you walk into our local ER, they're gonna be like, we're not gonna prescribe you anything. You're just looking for a drug. Go home, relax, take some Tylenol or ibuprofen. So it's really hard. I feel like as an endo warrior, I wonder, okay, is this really that bad? You kind of second guess yourself, and it needs to stop. We
I th-
need more education and, like you said, research. Why is it not being researched the way it should be?
there was definitely with regards to some of the people I've spoken to, especially when it seems for a lot of people to start at a young age.
Hmm.
And again, I think they almost get put off from being able to talk about it because, again, as you said, and almost every person I've spoken to have said the same words: "Suck it up. You're over exaggerating." So, and to be
Yeah.
told that this is the norm is
It's
a
so
really, really,
invalidating.
yeah, exactly. It's a really dangerous thing to do to people. That's like
Hmm.
if you found, and we said this when I think Leanne was saying when they found like huge masses and cysts inside your body. Any other, if some you were to find a lump somewhere, they don't go, just leave it. It's just a lump. It will be fine. No, it's not
Right.
supposed to be there. So therefore, we check it out and see what's wrong with it. When you've got a mass the size of a grapefruit growing inside your body somewhere, and they're like, well, just put up with it. So why are the
Yeah.
rules so different for one and the other? It just doesn't make sense.
It's like women are treated as like second class citizens. Like, why? Just because it has to deal with the female anatomy, it's not normal.
And I
It's
can
not
under
normal to be in
no,
pain almost every day.
and we can understand. We don't because it, there are more elements to it, and we don't necessarily discuss them in the interview situations like this. But from the medical points of view, if you, for example, perform an invasive surgery or hysterectomy on somebody, if they then went on to sue, and this has happened, they've gone on to sue the medical practitioners that, and it can be, for example, that might be what is needed to help that person, but then they feel that you have taken away their womanhood, or they feel that they weren't in the right frame of mind at the time, they can then sue the medical practice. So therefore, that makes them less likely to venture, yeah, venture forth that treatment because of the worry. And when you do have a suing culture, and it's probably worse in America, I think, when it comes from sort
Yeah.
of medical malpractice. So therefore, you're not going to want to offer that as a solution because you're trying to cover your ass all the time. So,
Yeah.
but then there must be a way that we can come to an agreement of whether it's people sign off and say, no, I am of sound mind. This is what you've told me. This is what needs to happen, and allow women to have the options to be able to have these treatments. And I know it's not a cure, but if it's the best you've got, then it's better to offer it than just say no, no, just put up with it.
Yeah, which I'm thankful I came to find my doctor when I did. Um, like I had told him, I'm to the point where it's like, take it out. I don't need it. I don't want it. But then it's hard because I know a hysterectomy won't, there's a good chance it won't help. I might be okay for maybe a year. Some women I see, oh, well, it helped me for 6 months. Some are like, oh, I'm great. And I'm 5 years out from
Mm.
having my hysterectomy. And from the research I've done on it, it seems to be that a lot of the endo has to be cut out. If
Right.
not, try to get all of it, which, I mean, it can grow anywhere. I've seen women who, when they have a menstrual cycle, their lungs collapse because there's endo on their lungs. Um, Apparently, a lady had it on her heart, and I believe she died of it. I think I saw
Jesus.
on a thread. I don't want to, don't take my word for it, but I'm pretty sure that's what I remember seeing. So it's like, where do you start? You pretty much need a whole surgery team just to try to get all the endo out. Because from my understanding, I guess if you leave some, it can grow and reattach elsewhere. So, because I guess it's not even endometrial tissue, which is what grows in your uterus. It's endo-like
Mm.
tissue. So my mind just like goes in these rabbit holes where I'm like, but if you do this, so it's really hard to even for me to make a sound, definite decision. Like I'm fine with having a hysterectomy because I don't need it.
Yeah.
But do I want to go into menopause? Do I want to risk osteoporosis and all this other stuff that can come with it if it's not even going to help a little bit? So
Something Leanne said actually, I think regarding to when they thought you'd had a miscarriage.
mhm.
I think this is what she means. Sounds like a decidual cast. Have you heard of that? Sounds like a
No.
decidual cast, more common in severe endo.
Oh, I think I have heard of that. Yeah, it was really small. It was maybe the size of a little bit smaller than a lima bean.
Okay,
Huge, but it was definitely terrifying. It
yeah,
was in the shape of what you see on pictures of fetuses. So, yeah, that might be what it was. I was never staged through my surgery, so I don't know what stage I am. A lot of doctors don't really agree with setting a stage anymore. It's more of an old practice because you can have stage one endo and be in the worst pain ever
mm.
and have a stage four woman have endo and she's like, oh, I'm fine. I don't really have bad pain. So
I
just because you have a higher stage doesn't mean the pain is worse.
yeah,
It just means it's moved throughout your body more.
yeah. I think from Leanne's situation, Alex's situation, it sounds like the amount of organs it's affect, the amount of spread, how much it's encased, different things,
Mhm.
and everything along those lines. Um, Something actually I wanted to ask because a and this is just a little thought experiment regards to, is this a relatively new thing that's happening? Because I can't imagine that even women from say several generations ago, where if they were told to suck it up and all this kind of thing, there would it would still have got them to a point where they were crippled and unable to have children, everything that goes along with it. So I don't know whether we've just discovered it, or whether it is a relatively new illness, because I'm sure if we were to look back through history, if it has been with humankind for a long while, we would have still seen some signs, whether in literature or various other means. And I don't know whether, because speaking to again the other people in the interviews and everything, did you notice with yours that if you went through bouts of high stress or anxiety, did it make it any worse?
Oh yeah. Yeah, actually just this past weekend I've been I almost feel like I'm going to have a flare up, so I've been taking extra self-care measures.
Mm,
I had to go grocery shopping, but a family member is sick. So worrying about, okay, do they have coronavirus? They're high risk.
yeah.
What's going to happen? I noticed that that really helped to flare up. And then we just had Thanksgiving in the US. So I was stressed with, okay, we're not going to families' houses this year. We're keeping everybody safe. So I chose to do the whole Thanksgiving spread for my kids, make it as normal as possible.
Mm,
So I had to go grocery shopping a couple days in a row, and I
ugh,
am worrying about, okay, am I going to make this like good? Because I'm going to try to hurry up and cut corners some places here and here. I'm going to do it traditional, and all the stress from that on top of like the physical stress, um, it definitely flares up. And I know if I have something big coming up, um, like a job interview or
mm.
something, I've noticed like I'll get digestive issues, I start cramping, and it, I think it is connected with stress where it, I don't know if it causes inflammation, possibly, which kind of makes sense because sometimes when you're stressed or really anxious, you can feel like your chest is crushing or your heart starts beating fast, and it can cause inflammation that way. So it kind of makes sense where endo would flare.
Well, we know that stress, for example, affects things like IBS, various stomach ailments. So if women are naturally, I don't know whether women are naturally more stressed than they used to be. I know women certainly are under a lot more social pressures from various elements in society. Women tend to be young women especially, I think I was looking at studies that were saying, tend to suffer more stress because of outside influences like culture and fashion and social media, the ideas of what life should be and all these kind of extra stresses that play on women's minds, that if they're
Hmm.
constantly in this state of flux and anxiety and stress, I'm just wondering, could that be something that's contributing, especially young women, because obviously a lot of these women are having this in the teenage years,
Hmm.
and teenage years are bad enough for boys and girls, but for women especially, a lot more stuff is happening.
Oh
um
yeah.
could that be something that's exacerbating it and making it worse than, because Crohn's obviously is, I think, exacerbated by stress as well, and there's so many of these illnesses that so I'm struggling to talk as well. I suffer with my own brain fog. um but there does seem to be some kind of connection between obviously I haven't seen statistics, but high stress people and these illnesses of, say, endo, IBS, all of these kind of things. So it does make you wonder, are young people leading more stressful lives, and this
Mhm.
increasing it and amplifying everything that women are suffering and going through?
I think it makes sense. Like if you think about, it wasn't till what this usually I want to say the 60s, 70s when women were expected to work. It, especially in America, a one income household, you're not going to pay for anything. You're going to be stuck at the bottom
Mm.
in poverty unless you have at least two incomes. And even then, it's a struggle to pay for bills and make ends meet. So I think women pre 60s, they were just expected to help run a household. They were, they knew what their job was. You take care of the children, put them off on the bus for school, you cook dinner, clean up, which I mean, I'm a stay-at-home mom, so I see how that is stressful in
Oh
itself.
yeah, running a
But I think
family is a yeah.
yeah, I think now, like you said, like right now we have, as a woman, you should be working. You should be helping to pay bills. Why aren't you working? Oh, it must be nice to stay home with kids. So I think just the added, we're hard on ourselves because why am I not
Yeah.
like that person who is working one or two jobs and taking care of a family, and also, they go and exercise, they can work out and they do all these things in one day that I can't do in a week.
Yeah.
it's it's really hard on us.
There's
And I think we need to stop being so hard and just be gentle and like, I can't do that right now. Maybe tomorrow, maybe next week, maybe not at all.
Well, I think and again, the whole people talking about endometriosis and opening up and being honest about it.
Mhm.
Generally in life, there's a lot of misinformation about what life really is, what reality is, and everyone on social media is surrounded by wonderful, beautiful people living Instagram beautiful lives where, look at me here clicking. I'm out in the wilderness and the love, and you actually find that they're in their back garden or behind a rubbish tip or something, but just took the photo to make it look wonderful. And
Yes.
all these, again, conflicting ideas. You should be like this, but this week, and no, you should be like this another week. And people don't have any sort of parameters that they feel that they can work in. Everything's, I should be this, but I should be this, I should be this as well. So everyone's confused, everybody's stressed. Women are, I think, are hitting their biggest depression rate. A lot of it is because of social media. So
Hmm.
all of that adding to what every human being has on their plate is just a recipe for absolute stress and a miserable existence. So I think all of that then physically manifests itself. Same as stress with people working high stress jobs, whether it's businessmen or, you put on weight, you have heart attacks, you can have strokes. All of these
Hmm.
things manifest in negative ways. And I wonder if endo is partly related to negative stresses and anxieties in people's lives, and it just makes it worse. Again, I'm not a doctor. I've got no clue.
I honestly would probably put money on it too. And I don't know how it is where you are, but in America, because we're expected to have a two-person household at least, and usually one of the people has to work at least two jobs. Um, and you're so busy, and kids have sports, and you have this and that and jobs. We tend to go to fast food restaurants and, got McDonald's, we can grab a burger and fries really quick, but it's so greasy and disgusting and
Yeah.
overly processed. Or um I know before, when I was in college and working, and I had two of my kids at that point, it was a lot of Chinese food. We were doing like boxed and frozen dinners, which are not great for you. um, so I think diet has a lot to do with it
Mm.
too. And like you said, stress. Because I noticed it's gotten a little better as long as I try to keep myself calm and remember I'm not like everybody else. I'm different. And that's okay for right now until we figure out how to best treat it, not even cure. Um, and I changed my diet. Like I said, I'm gluten free, no
Yeah.
alcohol. I try to limit my sugar. I can't get rid of my caffeine. Like a lot of women are like, coffee is a no go. I'm like, no, all day.
Yeah.
It's what keeps
This
me
is this
going.
keeps me alive.
Yes, like you don't want to see an uncaffeinated Brittany. No way. So that's the only thing I definitely can't change. But yeah,
One
it's
sin out of the many isn't that bad, is it?
no.
Come on.
Yeah.
Says he who is drinking, who lives by Pepsi Max. But did you find? I know you said that the changing your diet to, would you say, is it a more vegan diet? Did you say, or is it?
Kind of. I still eat meat. I've never been a big meat eater
Mm,
because I'm really picky and it grosses me out. Um, but mostly just eliminating gluten,
mm,
like the wheat flours and stuff. That has helped a lot. So even like I made a pie for my kids and I made it with regular crust. Even just that little bit, I could start feeling myself bloat,
yeah,
and I'm like, okay, no more. Dairy, I seem to be okay with if it's lactose free, or cooked in something, and I use it in moderation. But to have a glass of milk or anything like that is not,
no,
try to stay away from it. So I use almond milk, and soy. Soy tends to flare me up too. So that's a little easier to stay away from.
yeah. Yeah, it's a funny one, especially when you say that it seems to help, but then you will just get sort of, you make a change, it seems to help, and then a flare up comes along to sort of kind of slap you in the face and say, no, it's not good enough.
I'm
Sorry.
still,
Yeah, you thought you got rid of me, but no, no, we're
yeah,
always here.
yeah. And I'm, before my surgery, which is when I had enough. I was getting my period, and about 3 days before my period started, I would be cramping and bloating and in just excruciating pain until about day 3 of my period. And then it was a little better. My energy level was coming back up. And then 2 weeks later, which is probably when I was ovulating, it would be another attack of I'm bloating, excruciating pain. And even in between the I feel good, you still have these almost dull aches, almost
Yeah,
like your ovaries are just like heavy. Like, I'm still here. I'm still going to bug you, but it was bearable. So it's really hard, I think, to judge what is an emergency, what isn't normal, because our normal is we're in pain almost every day of the month.
yeah.
So
I don't know if it's ever been done, for example, like a survey of women who describe what there must be something out there, women describing what their monthly cycles are like, what they experience on a day-to-day basis. Because, say, if this is for a lot of women, and a lot of women just don't talk about it, this is no way to live.
no.
There's got to be some option. Leanne just said, Now with the internet and social media, there's a pressure to be a Pinterest perfect. Leanne's extremely intelligent, and she's much better at putting things in a educated, I can't even talk. See, sophisticated way. A mum as well as working, looking a certain way, providing a crunchy, healthy lifestyle. No, thank you. Yeah, it's not
Yeah.
it's not
I've
worth the.
gotten to the point where I'm like, I'm done hiding. 'Cause there's so many times it's like, okay, let's put on makeup and let's do my hair and we'll get dressed and pretend we're okay. When inside you're like, I'm dying. I
Yeah.
think this is it.
Mm.
But now I'm to the point where even my family, like, I'm probably looked at as like the flaky relative where, oh, she doesn't go to many family functions or she's never around or, but I'm in pain.
That's a very good point, actually. What you were saying there. Do you find how supportive are your family and your friends? Do they understand, or because again, one of the similarities between a lot of people who suffer with this is just people tend to sort of brush it off and, oh yeah, she's just flaky, she's probably just making it, she's just making a meal of it. Oh yeah, she never comes to this, she never goes out anymore, she never does this. Do they understand, or is it sort of you really have to sort of explain, no, this is really serious?
I've had to explain. And even then, I think some of my friends, they've gone through a lot of the same issues. One of them had a hysterectomy. I can't remember exactly her reason. She wasn't diagnosed with endo though. Um, she would still be like, "Oh, just get a hysterectomy." I'm like, "That's not a cure all for this. Like, this is different.
Yeah,
Just
it's not a
so,
tattoo. Get a hysterectomy, everyone's having them.
it's a cure all. It's the cool thing to do. All
Yeah.
the cool kids are doing it." And another one of my friends, like, I've talked to her about it, and she understands for being in pain, but I don't know her extent
Mm.
of her pain. Um, so I don't want to invalidate her, but there's times she's like, "Oh yeah, I go through that too." So it's like, do you? Is it just normal cramping? I don't know. My mom, she understands the most. I think she, especially after my diagnosis
Yeah.
and me explaining to him, like, look, I can't even, mop the floors without having to rest because I'm in so much pain. And she's like, I remember that. And once she hit menopause, she was done. She was almost cured. So she's like, maybe that'll happen for you. I'm 32.
Yeah, you don't.
I'm
Again, that's
when am
another.
I going to hit menopause?
Yeah, thinking of, oh yeah, menopause will cure you at such a young age. I know
Yeah.
life isn't perfect and life isn't great and it's unpredictable and it's got some very horrible things in it, but people having the menopause in their 30s, this should
It
not be
shouldn't happen.
happening. No.
No.
Um, Leanne said also, yeah, she agrees, by the way, coffee is life. Um, it's so individual too. Dietary changes make no difference to her. If anything, making changes aggravates her other conditions. So,
Mm.
also, TL, he's a fellow American. My ex's daughter may have this. She's seeing a holistic doctor that claims her pH is off. I think this is quackery, but wondering if that has ever been presented to others. Somebody has mentioned the pH thing before. I don't know whether it holds water or not.
I've never heard of that.
No.
Besides with like bacterial
Yeah.
infections. Outside of that, I never heard it relate to endo.
But one thing that was interesting with yours was that they said you were sort of the idea of having endo was put on the table quite early on, where for a lot of people they really have to fight to even have the idea of endo be presented to them. So
Hmm.
how quickly was it sort of one of the first sort of how quickly were you given that option that this could be endo, even though they weren't willing to give you the procedure to diagnose it?
Well, I'd say early on, I didn't see my first gynecologist until I was 17
Mm.
and pregnant. So at that point, my primary was just like, this is normal. And then at 17, I had that pretty much quack doctor um, until I was 23. 25, 26. And then I left the practice, and the two OBGYNs that I saw after that, they didn't really touch much on it. I talk about it and they're like, oh, yeah, try, menstrual medicines like Pamprin or Midol. Um, and then when I went back in, I think it was early 2000, I think it was like January 2019
Mm.
is when I went and saw the one doctor who was like, yeah, it sounds like you have textbook endo. And then he retired in June, and then I got my current OB. So it took at least like 5, 6 doctors to finally say, yeah, this is what it is.
Yeah.
So, and I mean, that was just last year. So I was 30 when I first saw him.
God, yeah. It just, again, it's one of those things that's one of the things that puzzles me is the whole, we know it's a real thing. We have evidence to show it's a real thing, but there seems to be a real reluctance to put the idea forward that someone could have endo. And
Yeah.
again, there's so many elements to this that don't make sense and that we don't understand.
I think a lot of it is they don't fully understand. They know there's no cure, there's just band-aid treatment options. They throw
Yeah,
birth control pills at you and they're like, here, take some ibuprofen and Tylenol, you'll be fine, you'll live. Because it's not technically cancer, they don't think, okay, it's not going to kill you.
yeah,
But I know
but
after my flare-ups and during my flare-ups, like, you're confined to a bed, and it's mentally disabling. So I'm in this like exhausted state where I'm like, I don't feel worthy. Like, my kids deserve more. They deserve a mom that can cook and clean for them. And it's hard enough to even take a shower during a flare up.
you tend to also forget who you actually are as a person. There's one I'm
Hmm.
sure you saw when Alex was talking. She didn't even recognize who she was when she looked back later on. And
Yeah.
yeah, and then obviously your mental health plummets. It affects the other people around you. It
Hmm.
just affects people on so many levels. It's just It's just horrifying.
Yeah, which I'm sure people can relate to. Like, if you're sick or you have a really bad headache, you're going to be short with somebody. You're maybe short tempered. Like, I don't have time for this.
Yeah,
I just need to go relax. And that's kind of like, half the days out of the month, that's how we feel. We're in excruciating pain. We don't have time for, stupidity. We don't have time for these stupid questions or, no, I'm not going to go do this for you for right now. And so it's just something we live with, and it almost becomes part of us. But yeah, like she said, that's not us. Once
no,
we feel good, we could be the best people ever, but during a flare up, you're going to hate us.
yeah, you're not to blame for it. So I think we could all learn a little bit of tolerance when it again.
Yeah.
I can't imagine what it must feel like to live with this degree of pain. I've experienced occasional things in my life of which were short lived, but I thought I can't imagine pain worse than this. Living on a day to day basis, where again you've got children, so it's not like you can stay in bed all day. You've still got to try and get up. You've still got to try and work through it,
Hmm.
which is when they call somebody an endo warrior, then they're not joking.
No,
It's not
no.
just someone there to just like boost someone's ego who isn't feeling well. No, this is a debilitating illness that
Yeah.
I think unless you've experienced it, you're never really going to be able to fully appreciate the horror of what it is to live with.
No, no, it's not. And I just have to, like I said, self-care and be gentle, and hopefully this doesn't last forever. Like I said, that's why I'd almost rather be pregnant and have go into natural labor
Yeah,
every other year, because you know that labor pain is going to end. You
yeah,
have a baby, beautiful, and it's like, okay, this is better. But with endo, you're like, is it going to end? Especially, working up until just my surgery last year before getting on Orilissa, I was in pain at least 2 weeks out of the month.
mm,
So it seemed like it kept getting longer and longer that I was in pain and more often. So I'm like, is it going to be to the point where it's every day out of the month I'm going to be in pain, or will I have a couple good days? So it's so unpredictable. You can't plan. If you plan for something, it seems like the stress of planning for it, you throw yourself into a flare up.
Yeah. So one more question I'd just like to ask before we call it an afternoon for me, morning for you. No, your afternoon
Oh,
now.
let's see. Oh yeah, it's almost 12:30.
Okay, your afternoon. Leanne also said, yeah, agreed. I take all three labours back to back than this.
Yes.
Yeah.
They end eventually.
So regarding the surgery you've had, did you say that was that wasn't a full hysterectomy, was it? That was a
No,
it
it
was a
was
tying of just tying of the tubes. What was it? You
so
said it
they
was again?
cut my tubes
Cut your
out so
tubes.
it's more permanent.
Yep.
And it was mostly for to diagnose. It was an exploratory.
Oh, okay.
Um, he removed some just more for testing.
And did they say what the situation endo wise was at all while they were there?
No, and at that point I hadn't researched enough like I did after the one flare up I had in August.
Mm.
So I didn't really understand stages. I didn't understand that it could literally go like head to toe. So I don't know how much is in there. I plan on talking to him when I have my appointment
Mm.
at the end of December. Because we'll be talking about more treatment options. I can only be on Orlissa for a couple more months.
Yeah.
So it's kind of scary. I'm like, I don't want to go on other things. I don't want to have surgery back to back for it not to work. But I don't want to be in pain.
So,
It's
would you take the hysterectomy option if it was offered?
Yeah, I've
Yeah.
already discussed with him like that is a possibility. I think I'll ask if he can excise most of the endo, if
Mm.
not all, and then get a hysterectomy. Yeah.
Well, whatever happens, wish you all the luck in the world.
Thank you.
Again, thank you for joining me. It's and telling your story. It's not an easy thing to talk about, and it's especially when at the moment there doesn't seem to be an end treatment or an end goal for it. It's an ongoing thing, but let's hope the world wakes up a little bit, realizes that it is something that needs to be taken notice of and something needs to be done about, and they can pump some serious amount of money and research in and get something done about it.
Yep. I think a lot of it is just awareness and education. Tell people it's not normal to be in pain like this. And women finally be like, oh, really? It's
Yeah,
not? I think will help. We'll have a whole
definitely.
bunch of angry women like, fix us.
Maybe that's what it needs. It needs some. I know they do. There are endo marches, but maybe we need like a global or at least countrywide march of just all women.
Yep.
Because there's nothing
Yep.
that scares men more than angry women talking about lady parts. They just don't know
Oh,
how
yeah.
to handle it.
Just go gory
Yeah.
pictures and all.
All right. Thank you very much, and you take
Thank you
care of
for having
yourself. Okay.
me. Yes.
All
Thank you. Have a good day.
you too. All the best.